Hi everyone, it's Emma, first year medical student studying in Australia, and I thought I would make a video for all of you pre-meds who will be taking the MCAT soon, next year, or at some point in your life, or if you're just a little curious about what this MCAT is all about. So here's a video all about my tips and tricks for the MCAT. Now, I'm going to divide this video into 3 parts. So when you're planning to study, some tips and tricks for that, when you are actually studying, and then sort of right before the exam / day of the exam. So no matter where you are on sort of your study journey, I'll leave the timestamps below so you can jump around and gather the information that you want, or you can sit down and watch the whole thing. Before I get started, I just want to make sure that I provide a little bit of context. So I took my MCAT September 2016, which would have been the very beginning of my 4th year of university, which isn't necessarily the time that all students take it, but you know, it's quite common. I studied over the course of that summer, so I had those 4 full months, but I was also working full-time at that same time. So I just wanted to make sure that I provided that context so you know that all of my tips and tricks kind of come from that background. I've only taken the MCAT once. I was lucky enough to get in Australia with the score that I did achieve. The score I got, it was, you know, the higher side of the sort of average, but it didn't blow anything out of the water. Everyone comes to the MCAT with a different background, and everybody has a different journey with this beast of a test, and I do want to recognize that it is a privilege to be even able to write the exam at all. Let alone being able to write the exam multiple times, taking courses, buying all the materials. It is an expensive process, and there are some people where that is a really big barrier. I had to work full-time during the summer I was studying to be able to afford the whole application process period, as well as, you know, sustaining myself while I was in university, and that's not necessarily possible for all people while they're studying, or for some people the cost is still too big of a barrier. So I do want to encourage anyone who is in sort of that kind of position to check out the AAMC subsidy options. There's some available for people if you qualify, but I do just want to recognize that it is a huge privilege, as much as it is a torture as well, to be able to take this test to apply to medicine. So with that disclaimer and sort of my background, now you understand the position I'm coming to these tips and tricks from. Let's jump right into it. So you're planning to study. Now this should be done outside of your sort of mandated study period that you've given yourself. So I had the whole summer to study, but I planned in the months leading up to the summer how I was going to study. I did some research on other videos like this and tried to find what I think a process would have worked for me and tried to implement that. When you're planning to study, first you want to pick the resources that you're going to use. So whether that is exam crackers, Kaplan, Princeton, are you going to do a course? Are you just going to use the books? What are you going to do? What's available to you, and what do you think will work for you? Try to beg, borrow, and steal some used copies if you can. Get used to sort of the voice of the information. I personally studied with the Princeton Review sort of kit. I got it for a birthday present one year, as requested. Poor parents thought I was a bit of a weirdo. And I supplemented that with some exam crackers for the cars specifically, because I really wanted more material to practice, and online resources like Khan Academy, that kind of thing. I did not take an online course or a course in person simply because I didn't have the time or the money. And I chose Princeton over Kaplan simply because I liked sort of the voice of it a little bit more. I found Kaplan sometimes felt a little pandering, but that's just me reading it. I think it's probably still a great resource. I did get those books new because I was taking the new edition of the MCAT, but now that new edition of the MCAT has been around for a little while, so you can probably find some used resources, because once we get into medicine, we don't want to see those books anymore, and we sell them. I sold mine at a really, what I think, reasonable prices, because I wanted to help sort of bring that barrier down for a student local to me. So check out sort of used books things or the Facebook Marketplace and see what you can find. I also supplemented with the AAMC question banks for definitely cars, and I think maybe one other, as well as the AAMC practice test. The Princeton Review kit came with full-length practice tests, I think 1 or 2, but I wanted to make sure that I got the AAMC practice test so that I could get used to the actual user interface of the test, but we'll talk about that in the next section. While you're planning to study, so in the months leading up to your dedicated study time, if you can, try to get your hands on either the PDF or the hard copy of the AAMC sort of like MCAT guide or PDF. It's a pretty dense document, but even reading through the sections, it helps you understand the point of the different sections and what's going to be divided, and it explains to you the process of taking the test itself. So it's a really useful thing to, I'm not going to say read the whole thing because it is long, but it is a useful thing to look at. I believe you can download a PDF, and if I find it, I will link it down below. But it is really useful in understanding and trying to dissect the test. If you're a first generation med student like myself, and you don't really have any friends that have successfully before you gotten into med school or successfully written the test before you, it can kind of give you an idea of what is going to be involved, and it's a good idea to at least look at it, and it may answer some questions that you didn't know you had, or at least just having your hands on it, so when you're actually studying, if something comes up and you don't understand the point or you don't understand what the test is going to be like, it can kind of help you. So step 2 when you're planning to study is make a schedule and then stick with it. When you're making a schedule, you really have to think, how are you motivated? Are you someone that needs a very strict schedule of, I will be doing X chapters every day? Or are you someone that needs a bit of a looser, more flexible schedule of, I will complete X chapters by the end of the week?
Something I just wanted to touch on here after the fact is, how did I actually create my schedule? It's pretty basic. I just looked at how many weeks I would have to study and how many chapters within all of the Princeton review work there was to cover, and how many weeks I wanted to review. I took the total number of weeks I had, minus the weeks I needed to review, which I'll talk about in the next section, and divided the total number of chapters by that. And that gave me how many chapters I needed to get through each week, and then you can break that down into days, half days, however you want to work it. You can divide that into your week minus Sunday so that you get Sundays off. It's really up to you.
Really be honest with yourself, but do stick to that schedule. I personally did a certain number of chapters every day, but I didn't mandate what material that would be that I was studying. So that way, when I came home from my full-time job, I could at least think, oh yeah, I could do some biology today, and reviewed those chapters instead of forcing myself to do chemistry that day when I was miserable and didn't want to do chemistry. But that's what worked for me. You gotta really think about what's gonna work for you. Research all sorts of different schedules. I counted how many chapters I had and how long I had to do it, as well as time for review, and then I simply just divided that number, and that came down to however many chapters it was per day, and I worked through it. Some things you definitely need to maintain in your schedule, or to make sure that you put in your schedule: practice tests. Once you have started studying and you're at a point where you feel like you could, try to take practice tests as soon as possible, and set those practice tests to be a full day, just like the exam, outside of your bedroom, and go and do it. I'll talk about that a little bit more in the while you're studying section. So practice tests are something that need to be included in your schedule. Schedule yourself breaks and time off. I have a birthday that's during the university summer break in Canada, so I had to give myself a day off for that. It was my freaking birthday, right? As well as time to see friends and family. It is the summer when most of us study for this test, and it can be really, really disheartening to see everyone out there having fun and enjoying the sort of summer while you're stuck inside. And if you're like me and you study during the summer between university years, you really want to be cautious that you're not going to burn out. I don't think I gave myself enough sort of time to breathe since I took the test at the beginning of September. I actually had already started classes when the weekend that the test had been scheduled. So the first few weeks of my 4th year were just a mess of me trying to catch up because I couldn't focus on coursework while I was waiting to take the MCAT. Lesson learned. Advice given. And finally, you really need to make sure that you have scheduled enough time for review. So I left the last 3 weeks to a month, I think, of just straight do a big practice test and then reviewing the content that I was constantly missing or messing up. Having that leeway also gave me a little bit of freedom, so if there was one day where I was sick or I really couldn't study, work went late, things come up, I had that time to kind of give myself a day off here and there because I had a buffer at the end. So now, tips for while you're actually studying. Your dedicated MCAT study time has started. What do you need to know? The first and most important thing I think about studying for the MCAT is practice. You have to practice those questions as much as you can, as often as you can, and incorporate as many full-length practice tests as you have available to you and that you can do without spending every Sunday in the library taking an MCAT, because you will burn out. But the AAMC question banks are really helpful for this, and I think outside of having the books, like the Princeton books I used to study, having the AAMC actual practice tests was probably key to me being able to do the MCAT well. And that's because you get used to the user interface of the questions, how the annotation works, the highlighting, all that jazz. But you know, the questions are unique to the MCAT. The way they phrase them, the way they format them is special. It's different than how, you know, Mr. Professor Brown taught you the cell cycle. You could ace his questions because, you know, he taught you the material, he wrote the practice questions, and then he wrote the exam. This is something new, it's a new beast, and the questions are written from people you've never come into contact with. And they are written by people that didn't make the learning material. So do you see how that is a little bit different and it doesn't quite line up? The things that are emphasized in wording and such in your learning material may not necessarily be the way that it's phrased in the test. So try your best to get your hands on as many practice questions as you can. Practice is particularly important for the cars section. Now, the cars section is a unique beast within the marathon of the MCAT, and you know, it's very divisive. Some people love it, some people hate it. I'm lucky enough that I'm kind of one of the people that find it a little bit fun once I got sort of used to how cars works and what is the point of cars. It's all in the name, critical analysis and reasoning skills. They just want to know that you can pick apart an argument and that you can extrapolate from that. So for cars, I actually signed up for a daily email blast that sent to sort of a practice cars section. I'll link it below if I can find it again. And I would do that every day over my lunch. So outside of the chapters that I had to study that night, I had, over my lunch break, I took, 10 minutes to sit down and do a cars passage just to get used to it. And I used the exam crackers to supplement, again, more practice with cars as well as what was in Princeton and in the practice test for AAMC. Cars, you can do cars. I guarantee it. It's just a matter of getting used to it. I really did like the way the exam crackers book walked through the types of cars questions and what sort of how to pick them apart. I remember that being really good compared to the other materials. So if you're going to supplement, that's one that I would suggest. Equally as important as practice, if not more so, is the ability to reflect on those practice questions. So not just, oh, I did a practice passage and I got 5 out of 7 right, awesome. No. What are the 2 that you got wrong? What kind of question is that? What kind of STEM is that? And what are the ones you get right consistently? You need to be able to pick those apart and figure that out. Is it the questions that are double negatives, or the questions that are, all of these are correct, except? What are the questions that you consistently just do wrong? And you need to be able to reflect on, is that a misunderstanding of the question? In which case, all of these questions I need to take at a slower pace and, pause and think. Or is it a misunderstanding of the material? And in which case, where did I go wrong and why did I go wrong? What did I not understand about that particular biology concept, the use of that formula in physics, or understand and breakdown of that car section? Practice will get you so far. You'll get used to the types of questions and how they ask them, but reflecting on your practice exams and really digging deep into where you go wrong and where you go right will help you improve your score. You'll be able to see the increases in that score because of that critical reflection. Finally, while you're studying, like I said, schedule breaks for yourself, but also reward yourself along the way. The MCAT is a marathon, and while you're training for a marathon, you're running mini marathons all the time. And you need to make sure that you're keeping yourself motivated and you're keeping yourself refreshed. So whether that is when you finish a book, you get to go out to a movie with your friends, or you ace or get the score you want on your practice exam, how are you going to treat yourself? Do you get a day off? that kind of thing. Make sure there's little rewards along the way that will keep you feeling good and confident about yourself. The hard part about the critical reflection is you can dwell on the negatives and the areas of improvement so much that you forget that there are areas where you're winning and areas that you're succeeding. So however it works for you, for me, it was sort of like treats for myself and the occasional day off that I earned. I kept myself recharged and refreshed and reminding myself that I can do this and I am improving as I go through my studies. So I would have called this next section sort of during the test, so that you would have had preparing to study while you're studying and then while you're taking the test. But some of these tips and tricks are sort of for right before the test. So I'm going to call this section the MCAT itself, but we're going to include some tips for when you're leading up to the exam. So 1 week before the exam, I really want you not to stress out too much. I know I say that, it's definitely easier said than done. I was a horrible wreck the week before my test, but it's really key that you take care of yourself. Like I've been saying this whole video, the MCAT is a long test. You sit there all day and you're working your brain all day. So leading up to it, you need to be taking care of yourself. You know, getting outside, getting some exercise, getting good night's sleep, hydrating, eating well, all those things. Also, if you're anything like me, you need to take that week to take care of yourself mentally and emotionally. So don't harp over questions that you're getting wrong. You know, review them and make sure that you can try to get that information right. But cramming in and doing all of the hard stuff and beating yourself up for the week leading up to the test is not going to be helpful. Review what you do well, really emphasize what you do well and be excited about that. Look at your weak spots and try to improve them, but don't spend a week beating yourself up. Take care of yourself this week and you will be better for it in the test. Something else to try to do, you know, a week before the test or at some point before the test is the same information I gave in my MMI video tips, but know your route to the test center. Where is the test center? How are you going to get there? And practice getting there if you can. I know that that can be a barrier for some people if the test center is not in your local city or anything like that, but try as best as you can to get there and see how, sort of run through what the morning of a test would be like, because the last thing you need morning of is to be stuck on a bus going in the wrong direction or stuck in traffic because you didn't know that there was going to be traffic at that time. So as best as you can, replicate a test morning and practice getting there at least once. It will help you so much more with the nerves on the day. And the last thing to do, sort of the week before the test, plan the way you're going to celebrate that you're done. I mean, you have done a hard thing and you have worked hard and you deserve whatever you think it is that you deserve after that. So, you know, some people go out the night after writing the MCAT. I was too tired. I did not want to. But I think I had like a movie night or something with my boyfriend and just relaxed. And then the next day I planned something fun. So like, you know, it was still kind of warm. So it was that getting out there. I mean, I had to catch up on schoolwork that I was missing. But do something fun afterwards. If you write the MCAT in the summer, plan a beach day for the next day. Do something that is pure and simple joy and reward for you because you have earned it. And if you plan it now, you have something to look forward to when you walk out of that test. Okay, it's the night before the test. What do you need to do? Again, if you're anything like me, you like to have things planned out. So I put my outfit out. I packed my bag, I packed my lunch, I had everything ready to go, all set aside, so that in the morning I didn't have to think. For your outfit, wear something that's comfy, but you know you're gonna wake up in, so not the PJs you just went to bed in, but also you don't need to be in a suit. I think I was wearing leggings because I curl up in weird ways while I write tests, and like a Lululemon sports jacket or something. I do suggest layering because, you know, test centers can sometimes be cold, or they can sometimes be too hot because you're nervous because you're writing a big test. Layers are awesome. But you don't want to be too bulky and things like that. Having a lot of pockets is a pain because they're going to have to check your pockets every time you go in and out of the test. For lunch, don't bank on having a microwave in your test center, but you do have a lunch break as well as snack breaks and things like that. Pack food that is good but food that is also good for you. So I think I had a salad, some hard-boiled eggs, and like some veggie snacks and stuff. I wanted to make sure that if I was too nervous to eat, there were things that I could still eat that would, you know, give me nourishment, but I also know I had some chocolate and some candy in there to keep me motivated. Bring water as well. And what else to bring with you? I know they will send you information on what kind of ID is acceptable. Make sure you have that. I think I also brought like a scanned copy of it or something because I needed it. I brought like maps on how to get to the venue, and I brought out like a printout of the confirmation of the test booking just so I had everything. I don't think you'll need all of that, but follow the email that is sent to you when you register and bring everything that you need to, and just have that set in a bag all ready to go. You know, if you have any lucky things that you need to bring with you as well, bring those, and they'll sit in the break room for you to hold, touch, look at whenever you can. Don't bring anything that looks like notes though, obviously, because that's just gonna set up a whole bunch of drama by accident potentially. So, you know, you can bring like a little note like from a family member or a friend wishing you good luck, or one to yourself, but don't bring like something that looks like a notebook because they're gonna be suspicious of that. And the last thing to do the night before the test, again, easier said than done, get a good night's sleep. Try as best as you can to relax and do some self-care. You have worked hard, and cramming the night before is not gonna help. Just know and trust the process that you have worked hard and you're going to do well, and you are. You can do it, okay? So now we finally got it. We're writing the test. What do we need to know? You are going to have to do that whole set up a fingerprint thing, and they're going to check your pockets every time you go in and out of the room, and that can be a little bit confronting, but just know it's there. Know that it's going to happen. And it's really not that bad. The people at my test center were really nice, and they kind of laughed at it because I had to check up the sleeves of my tiny little sweater every time. But just letting you know that that does happen. It's not invasive, and you know, you kind of get used to it after sort of the first break. But during the test, I want you to keep an eye out for those questions that you know trip you up. So for me, it was all of those blah, 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 except pick that answer. I always had to stop, take a deep breath, and reread that question and take that one at pace, because I knew from my critical reflection, those ones messed me up. What are those ones? But also, you know, take little celebrations where you can get them. If you got a question and you're like, I know that that one's right, give yourself a little like boost, because it probably is. You're doing well. And the last thing during the test is just to remember, take a deep breath when you need to. You're doing okay. You're here writing it, and that in itself is, you know, a hard thing to do, and you deserve a pat on the back for that. So just remember to breathe, and just remember that you've had a good process up to this point and you can do it. I believe in you, so if that helps, take that in with you, I guess. So that's sort of all the tips and tricks I can think of to give you. If there's anything that you think I've missed, comment it down below, share it with other people if you've already written the test, or if you have questions or want me to touch on something more specifically, comment below and I will try to have a chat with you, or maybe some other med students can help as well. Make sure you subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, and give this video a like if you enjoyed the format so I know to keep going with videos like this. But yeah, like I said, I'm Emma, first year medical student, and I hope this video helps. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.